Well, good morning, church. Great to be with you. My passion in life is helping couples enjoy life together. And I want to jump right into Ecclesiastes. I love this book. I share it everywhere I go, Ecclesiastes 9:9. If you want to know what the bookends of Ecclesiastes are, it's chapter 1, life is hard. Chapter 12, then you die. These are the bookends of Ecclesiastes. And in the middle, there's this missing theology for marriage ministries and churches today that sometimes we forget that it is more than okay to enjoy life together as a couple. We read in Ecclesiastes 9:9, enjoy life with your wife, whom you love all the days of this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life and in your toilsome labor under the sun. If you're new to CrossCreek today, welcome. We're glad you're here. We're here to encourage you in your marriage journey. But the word toilsome there means grueling. It can be a struggle this side of heaven, here upon this earth, to go through life. It can be a challenge. To raise a family, to provide for a family can be a challenge. But the good news for your marriage today is that God didn't give you your spouse to be the toilsome labor. He gave you your spouse to go through the toilsome labor with. I remind couples in counseling and coaching all the time, Jesus is your source, Satan is your enemy, your spouse is your companion. And if you want to experience high levels of marital satisfaction, never treat your spouse like the source or the enemy. Plug in each of you to the true and only source of life. Spend your days giving each other the overflow. Take your stand side by side through the grind of life, the difficult seasons and stages of life, through the toilsome labor, and take your stand against the devil's evil schemes. Jesus is your source, Satan is your enemy, your spouse is your companion. One of the things I've been working on lately with couples is this idea of resilience. Couples walking away from their marriage, a spouse walking away from the marriage quickly because they don't have the ability to bounce back from difficult conversations. They don't have the ability to withstand the difficult seasons and stages of life, so they bail. And I'm not saying at 50 years old, as part of Generation X, that my generation knows resilience better than, Gen Z, but we did grow up in a different time. I want to show you my favorite toy. This is my favorite toy growing up as a kid. I wore this thing out. But we didn't just play with this toy. We were Evel Knievel in our neighborhood, and you would see us regularly out there all the time. And I don't want to say it, but the problem in our country today is I don't see enough ramps in neighborhoods. Can I get an amen on that one? Dad, stop by Home Depot on the way home and buy a 4x8 sheet of plywood and get the kids jumping again. This is what needs to happen. And I'm not a geometry expert, but I can tell you the kid on the end didn't make it out of this jump. And I want you to notice something. He's smiling. He knows he ain't going to make it out of this jump, and he's happy. Listen, that's how you knew who your best friend was. He was the last bus on your jump. And I had a dad who didn't believe in emergency rooms. Raise your hand if you had a similar dad who just said, I can stop the bleeding. And I'd come in, I have a scar here with about 11 stitches that I had. And my dad would set me down and be like, just drink this Pepto-Bismol. Let's see what happens. And Dad, I think I have to go to the hospital on this one. The only reason we would stop jumping is when this truck pulled into the neighborhood. And my dad taught my brother and I that the bell on the ice cream truck meant they were out of ice cream. That's a good dad right there. We built resilience because we ate sherbet out of these nasty toilet paper rolls right here. And we didn't have iPads. So we spent our days talking, hours a day talking into the back of one of these. We could spend hours going, Luke, I am your father. And there are people in this room who have built multi-million-dollar businesses who spent hours a day sticking their tongue into the back of that fan to see how close they could get it to the blade without touching. I'm just saying, those were good days. Then we would go to school, and I grew up in the 80s, so we had fire drills, but we also had nuclear blast drills. I grew up outside of Chicago. We thought we'd be the second or third city hit. But we were good because we just hid underneath this right here, and we knew we were safe. We knew the blast would not be able to touch us under that powerful. But then we'd go out to the playground. This is my favorite ride on the playground. I missed these on the playground. The whole point of this thing was to hurt somebody. You're like, which of our friends is getting hurt today? All the teachers were lined up against the school building, smoking. I don't know if you remember that. My kids think I'm exaggerating. My kids have come out of conferences and retreats with me going, Dad, your teacher didn't smoke next to the school. They smoked in the school. They smoked in the school. And if you stressed out your first grade teacher, Mrs. Horvath would be like, I'll be right back. And she'd go down to the teacher's lounge and pound one down real quick, come back and help you with a problem over your shoulder. And you'd be like, oh. So I'm just saying, we grew up in a little bit different time. And I just want to share with you some common marriage myths as we jump in today to avoiding marital drift. The first one is this: a good match guarantees outcome. I work with couples that think, we met and the sparks were flying. We were in love. And then I'll even hear them say this: I love Jesus. She loves Jesus. This should be easy. And I have to remind them, a good match is a good start, but it's not a guarantee of a thriving marriage. What we're talking about today is you have to be intentional with it. The second myth is this: compatibility is easy and automatic. Two becoming one, it's just easy if both of you are committed. And sometimes we're painting this picture to our kids that goes something like this: marriage is hard work. You got to grind it out. Listen, I celebrate 28 years of marriage next week, and I don't want the 30th anniversary card and the 40th or the 50th anniversary card to read, you made it. You got here. No, I want my kids to see mom and dad, even now as empty nesters with adult children, mom and dad enjoying life together. So let's maybe not use the term hard work, got to put a lot of hard time in. Let's maybe use the term intentional. Marriage requires us being intentional. Number 3, healthy couples avoid conflict. The Hebrew term for that is, it's not true. You know what? Healthy couples know how to fight. Healthy couples learn how to reconcile. A healthy spouse knows how to say, I'm sorry. A healthy spouse knows how to say, I forgive you. You see a couple that's enjoying life together, don't for a minute think it's because they've had an easy life, because they haven't had any struggle, because they haven't been through any difficult seasons or stages of life. No, it's because they've learned to be intentional even when conflict and difficult seasons and stages hit the marriage. Number 4, big issues cause most divorces. Just not true. It's the little issues not dealt with over time. We read about it in the Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 15. Catch the little foxes. The little foxes that sneak into the vineyards and start to destroy the vineyard so it can never produce the grapes or the wine. Catch them early, because they're going to do a lot of damage if you just let them go. We got to be on guard of the little things creeping into our marriage and have the ability to discuss them. But this is the one I want to spend a little time on. Number 5, shared interests keep us together. Maybe you know a couple in drift, or even someone within your family that maybe has divorced, and you've heard this line: we just don't have anything in common anymore. Well, I'm here to tell you there's something far more important than shared interest. Number 1, how you interact with one another in shared interest is more important than shared interest. Let's say you enjoy traveling. Both of us enjoy traveling. We love visiting. Listen, you know what's more important than the destination you're going to? How you're going to get there together. How you're going to get along on the way. You're like, we both love sports. We both love football. We both love the same team. And we're going to the game today. So listen, you know what's more important than loving the Cowboys and going to the game? It's how you drive getting there. Finding parking. Deciding what time you're going to get there. Deciding when you're going to leave. Deciding how you're going to. That's all far more important. You know what's also more important than shared interest? Showing interest in your spouse's interest. That's more important than shared interest. Lighting up when your spouse is sharing something that's important to them or something that they enjoy. I have a mentor, a marriage and family mentor. He's in his mid-70s now. And we were driving down the road one day, and he was in the passenger seat, and I'm driving, and he says, I can give you one point that you can share with couples that, Ted, will put you out of marriage ministry business. That's how I put it. You'll never need to do another marriage talk. You'll never need to write another marriage book. And I'm like, wow, one thing will fix every marriage problem. And I was on the edge of my seat. I said, what is it? He looked at me and said, you're not ready for it. just looked out the window. Did this for like 20 minutes. So he built me up, and I am waiting for the biggest gold nugget in marriage ministry history. And you know what he said to me? He looked at me in his frail 75-year-old voice, and he simply said this: stop being selfish. Stop looking just to yourself. Stop getting up every day thinking about yourself. Stop thinking every day about you. When you go to Philippians chapter 2, I love this book because we get this exhortation, then we get the example in Jesus. But Paul says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. So here's what's more important than shared interest. Verse 4, not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. As you continue reading in this text, what does it say? In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset that was in Christ Jesus, who did not see equality with God as something to be grasped. It's one of my favorite lines. Instead, he emptied himself. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. And I am grateful to be married to a woman who does this better than me. She is constantly showing interest in my interest. In 2021, I got a call that summer from a couple on the Kenai River in Soldotna, Alaska. They say, hey, we have a lodge up here and 15 tiny homes. We do this retreat for couples. Would you come and lead it? We know how much you love fly fishing. And that's an understatement. I am passionate about fly fishing. And they said, we'll give you some time to pray about it. I go, I don't need to pray about the answer, Jess. And but it was so last minute that Amy couldn't go. And Amy goes, oh, Ted, you haven't been to Alaska? I wanted to go there with you the first time because she know I'm passionate about that, just the whole idea of going to Alaska. She goes, do a good job so they can invite you back the next year. And I must have, because they invited me back in 22. Amy was able to go with me, but here was the problem. When she thought about going to Alaska, in her mind was Sandra Bullock and The Proposal. But instead, I gave her grumpy old men. Now, it was a very different trip than she had expected. She was not planning on being in waders 8 hours a day in a river. But we weren't on this river for an hour and a half. The year before, I caught a 30-inch rainbow trout, which was my record rainbow trout. We're not on here but an hour, and Amy lands this 32.5-inch rainbow trout. I can't even speak when I get this thing netted. She hooked it, got it in, all her, and I'm hugging the guide, inviting him to Thanksgiving. I was emotional. We're going, but Amy's not emotional. Like, this didn't move her, right? And she just couldn't even understand what was going on with me, and we're looking at each other on the boat on the way back, and I'm trying to explain to her everything going on, and she's like, wow, yeah. And you know what my precious wife said to me? She said, I wish you would have caught that fish. And I said, if you want that to be our story, I don't think these guys have social media. I bet we could get away with the whole thing. But talk about showing interest in another person's interest. So here's the bottom line. When it comes to enjoying life together, not treating your spouse as the source of the enemy, but seeing your spouse as a companion, your marriage is only going to do one of two things. You're only going to head down one of two paths. Okay, you're either going to decide, choose, be intentional, all words I love and wish we would use more in marriage ministry. You're going to choose to enjoy life together, companions through the toilsome labor under the sun, or you're not. Let me tell you, no one wakes up and chooses drift. You don't get up, it's never even a thought. Today I'm going to drift in my marriage. Drift is just the absence of decision. Drift is and by the way, if you look at this, I have this for marriage that I came up with, but this is how people drift in their faith too. People drift in their faith by no longer being intentional with the spiritual activities, gatherings, disciplines that grow our faith. But attraction and chemistry, for the singles in the room, whether you're dating or not, you're going to know that's the sparks. And here's what we know. What was natural early on must be intentional later on. After you've been married 20, 30, 40 years, you have to be intentional with what just was like breathing early on. But once you get on the bus together, you're only going to travel down decision or drift. If you choose and you're intentional in your marriage, you're going to live in discovery. Here's why this is important. A friend of mine in marriage ministry says over the course of your marriage, you're going to be married to 5 to 7 different people. Why? It's because we change as we go through life. The toilsome labor changes us. Children change us. Children can suck the very life right out of you. Bills change you. Jobs, careers change you. Empty nesting changes you. When your body begins to find its way into the grind, which is Ecclesiastes chapter 12, your body, first 5 verses, it talks about your body breaking down, finding its way into this toilsome labor and grind. When that happens, you begin changing. And here's the cool thing. When you change, if you're on the path to decision, well, you're living in discovery. Who's this new person I'm married to? That's curiosity and fascination. Amy and I are empty nesters now, living in curiosity and fascination. What does this new season stage look like for us moving toward devotion and dedication? But if you're on drift, path, drift road, whatever you want to call it, and your spouse changes, well, now you're disillusioned. And you start saying things like, I didn't sign up for this. He's changed. She's changed. I always love that in counseling because the wife will spend 30 minutes explaining to me how much he's changed. And then I'll share the last 30 minutes of changes that can be made to make the marriage better. And she'll respond with, he'll never change. I'm like, we established in the first 30 minutes that it's possible. So now let's just talk about some different changes, because if you stay on this path too long, which is what I want to spend some time with as we close out our time together, you move along past disillusionment. You stay there too long, you're moving toward disconnection and divorce. And there are some in the room watching online today or will be on campus that are in some stage of drift. And so let me look at 5 symptoms. Let's talk about 5 symptoms of drift. If here's what I know, and I know in many ways I'm speaking to the choir, because the Institute of Family Studies did research years ago and found that 78% of couples who regularly attend church together report that they are either very happy or extremely happy in their marriage. So I am in a room, I know who's in the room. There's a lot of you that would say, I'm very happy, extremely happy in marriage. So when you hear these symptoms, this is how you avoid drift. And we'll give some practical ways to avoid it. Now, if you're in drift, and maybe you're at disillusionment, there are some that may be here without their spouse, and they're in disconnection, or they've already contacted a lawyer. Let's give some practical ways that you can turn the bus around, because I love Ecclesiastes 9:9, but I love verse 4 just as much. It says, anyone who is among the living has hope. And we believe the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is the same power that can raise a dead marriage. So here's the first symptom. When a marriage drifts, you blame your spouse. If you would start, then I would. If you would stop that, I'd be a whole lot happier. That one annoying thing that I thought was cute in the attraction and chemistry phase, it's like nails on a chalkboard right now. And if you would, and here's what you don't even know you're doing. You don't even mean to do it, but we've all done it. When you set your spouse up to be the source of all your problems, you've automatically set your spouse up to be the solution. When your spouse is the source and the solution, you're stuck. You're waiting for them to change, and you're allowing them to control your happiness. Let me take you to Genesis 2:24 for just a moment. A verse we often look to for marriage, but you have to see so many parenting implications in this text and family of origin implications. It says, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother. We know what it means to leave. We know leaving physically. You move out of the house. You leave relationally. My daughter got married since I was with you last in 2022, and we have a great relationship, but it's a different relationship. You leave home emotionally. I told her on her wedding day, I said, after a good day or a bad day, I'm no longer your first phone call. When something needs fixed around the house, I'm no longer your first phone call. I'd like to be your second, but I'm not your first, because Caden is your first. You leave home financially, and all the empty nesters said, yeah. And every now and then I'm working with couples that are having a hard time, the leaving As they're trying to cleave, they're having the hard time leaving. I rarely have to counsel this, but if you can't leave home physically, relationally, emotionally, or financially well, then that's become very difficult for you. Every now and then I have to counsel you may have to leave home geographically and get a little space in order for being united to his wife, and they will become one flesh. And here's what I know. Your family of origin influences you as a spouse, but it doesn't define who you need to become as a couple. Look at all the ways that your family of origin, the family you left, influences you. It affects and influences the way you worship. Now, I love this song we ended with today, Gratitude. We sing it at our church. And I'm going to be honest with you, I have to gear myself up for the line in the song that says, so I throw up my hands and praise you again and again. I am married to an Assembly of God woman whose hands throughout all of worship are fully extended next to me. I grew up independent, fundamental, premillennial, King James Version only Baptist. We were what I call non-expressive. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? We only did any sort of movements when the song told us to. So we marched in the Lord's army. We flew o'er the enemy. We shot the artillery. My kids are shocked, and even some young people are going, what did they do? Yeah, we took up arms early for Jesus at our church growing up. Kindergarten, man, we were shooting the artillery. I love the faces I get. I'm like, what? Yeah. So when that song comes, Amy's already fully extended. This is what I do every time to psych myself up for this line. And I know it's coming, and you jumped right into it today. I didn't even get warning for it. But this is exactly what I do every time. When Amy's hands are raised, I go, so I throw up my hands and praise you again and again. And as soon as that line's done, I'm like, oh, okay, that was exhausting. Oh, I can't believe it. Every now and then my wife will give me even a hip thrust. I'm like, I know that's not allowed in worship. Think of her family of origin versus my family of origin. It affects the way you vote, spend. I grew up in a home that taught savings was money you put away for a rainy day. My wife grew up in a home that taught savings was the difference between the actual price and the sale price. That's family of origin stuff. And then you start blaming each other. The way you save, drive, fight, clean, joke, celebrate the holidays. I didn't know why when we got married, by the time, I pulled the 46 box down out of the attic that said Christmas decor. I was in no mood to celebrate the birth of my Lord and Savior. I was ticked. My kids would bring over an ornament and go, Dad, I made this ornament last year. Just put it on the tree. Why are we making this such a big deal? Because my wife grew up in the White House. Trees in every room, garland over every door, cookies baking while we decorate. Andy Williams played, it's the most wonderful time of the year. My family decorated for Christmas on a commercial break. Some of you know what I'm talking about. We kept a 3-foot pre-decorated tree with a garbage bag over it in the crawl space. We'd pull it out, put it on the dehumidifier. Joy to the world, the Lord is coming. We could be right back to watching TV. Birthdays, Christmas. We could do this for hours, talk about this going on in marriage. It even affects the way you load the dishwasher. And I'm not saying my way is the only way. It's the manufacturer's recommended loading instructions. But you want a term that will set you free in your marriage and end the blame game? NBD. No big deal. And I'm looking at some people going, no, VBD. It's a very big deal. No. And a different way is not the wrong way. As a couple, if you want to end the blame game, look at this guy, don't believe me. You're not even right. You were taking notes all the time, and I said that, and he goes, Don't listen to this heresy that's coming out right now. Let's practice it, because I want you to see a different way. It's not the wrong way. Make some noise if the one on the right is right. Make some noise if the one on the left is right. Look, you got one cat owner in this large of a group. You know who's worse than the person on the left? It's this person right here. And I'll call it out. You're lazy. You left a little bit on there so you could say it wasn't empty. And then when you did go get a new roll, you do this right here. Hey, make some noise if this brings great joy to your soul right here. All right, now that's proper toothpaste suspension, but you married this person right here. Or worse, this person right here. And you've watched them take their toothbrush and scrape that stuff off the top. You're like, what kind of animal won't use a cap? Make some noise if this brings great joy to your soul right here. But you married this person right here. Comedian Jeff Allen says, my wife now confronts me with questions all the time. I walk in the bedroom and she's like, hey, is this your underwear on the floor? And he's like, I sure hope so. If not, I'm gonna have some questions of my own around this place. Sir, write this down. No big deal. A different way is not the wrong way. Get it in the notes. All right, number 2, when your marriage drifts, if you don't deal with the blame game, it turns to anger. Now you're moving down the path of drift. You're moving from that disillusionment to disconnection. Gary Smalley says this about anger. He's my mentor, started the church with us over 22 years ago in Branson. And he said this about anger. Most powerful things on anger I ever learned. Unresolved anger is like drinking the poison, expecting the other person to get sick. And I work with couples and I'm always trying to figure out, are they sipping it or are they drinking it by the gallons? You never bury anger dead. Number 2, you never bury anger dead. You always bury it alive. And it'll resurface in another relationship. The work I do with pastors and church leaders, couples, I tell them, listen, if you're dealing with a closed heart, unresolved anger, it's not going to get fixed by going to another church. You have to resolve your anger. And I remind you of this in the day in which we live, where everybody claims conflict as trauma. I want to remind you, you may be 0% to blame for what happened to you, but you are 100% responsible for your healing and treatment of others. If you don't end the blame game and you close your heart, I deal with this all the time. Couples close their heart. A spouse closes the heart. Number 3, your marriage drifts. You begin isolating from others. You begin backing away from biblical community. Over 25 years pastoring now, I've had so many moments where a couple of months go by and I'm like, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. Where are they? And here's what happens when you're blaming one another, you're closing your heart toward your spouse and you begin isolating because you fall for the lie that says no one gets what I'm going through. And that's just not true. That's why I love to show this picture right here of our puppy. Because Dr. Scott Stanley at the University of Denver says, everybody falls in love with the front end of the puppy. You're all waiting for a puppy to show up right there, right? Yeah. But I want to remind you of this. Every puppy has a back end. And every marriage in here has a back end story. It's one of the reasons why I decided I never again want to be the oldest person in a small group in our church. I always want couples who have been in seasons and stages of life that I haven't been to yet. We say it this way at our church. It works in Branson, Missouri. Every marriage is a duet in need of great backup singers. And that's what CrossCreek wants to be for your marriage, a great backup singer. We get this from the Song of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 4, where the daughters of Jerusalem are the backup singers for Solomon and the Shulamite woman. And they say, we rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. And every couple in here needs someone rejoicing, delighting, and praising your love. Because bad backup singers will keep you in drift. Bad backup singers will get on the bus with you and go there. And they'll lead with you, they'll drive with you, they'll be a passenger with you to the 4th symptom, which is when your marriage drifts, you doubt your future. They'll help you doubt your future. They'll go down that path with you. It's one of the reasons why I love small groups at our church. Because if you're having a bad week, your marriage is struggling, you go to small group, you listen to other couples, get in your car afterwards, and you're like, wow. At least we're not as jacked up as those other couples that are in there. That's called biblical community, my friends. We're sharing life together and realizing we're not alone. Other people have experienced this. That's why I want to encourage the senior adults in the room that you're probably in your most influential season of life. Be that backup singer for your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, the young people in your circle of influence. And I'll end with this. When your marriage drifts, you begin to explore other options. You're now at the divorce and you're thinking about who you're going to date next, and you're sliding into the DMs of other people to figure out who's next. And I just want to remind you, this is my favorite definition from Scott Stanley, favorite definition of commitment. And it's simply this: making the choice to give up all other choices. You stood before God and gathered witnesses and said, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. And at our church, we used to say, like a lot of churches do, until death do us part. But we no longer say that line. We say, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until the Lord returns or calls one of us home. That's my prayer for you. I met this couple, Lloyd and Jean, in Iowa City, Iowa, at a marriage conference I did at their church years ago. And at the point of this picture, they were married 69 years. I called back to the church every year to follow them to 73 years of marriage. But I was at the book table after the event at their church, and I saw Lloyd from across the foyer making his way to me. And it took him a minute, but when he finally got to me, he stuck his finger in my chest and he said, young man, you don't quit. And for just a moment, he became a backup singer to Ted and Amy Cunningham's duet, spoke this massive blessing over us. And I'll never forget Gene hanging on his arm there. When he was done blessing me and backing Amy and I up, Gene reached in her purse and grabbed 2 identical collapsible canes, handed one to Lloyd, and both of them, like Indiana Jones, went and I watched them walk all the way out to the parking lot, and I called my wife, and I said, we need 2 canes and 2 of them rockers from Cracker Barrel, because we're in this until the Lord returns or calls one of us home. And if I can encourage the couples in here, not only in your marriage, but how important you are and how needed you are to be great backup singers. Mom and dad, you want to be a great backup singer to your children? Be an advocate for their marriage, not just your child. A football coach friend of mine loves to look at life, that 70, 80 years, Psalm 90 and verse 10 talks about in quarters. And he says, 0 to 20, that's your first quarter, 21 to 40, second quarter, 41 to 60, third quarter, 61 to 80 is your fourth quarter, and some of you in this room are in overtime. And I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, which means we don't even start playing until the fourth quarter. And some of you right now need to know you're in the most influential season of your life. And this church and this community and your children and your circle of influence need you to be great backup singers for their duets. I'll end with the words of theologian Kenny Chesney, who said, don't blink. Because just like that, you're 6 years old and you take a nap, you wake up and you're 25 and your high school sweetheart becomes your wife. Don't blink, because you might miss your babies growing like mine did, turning into moms and dads. The next thing you know, your better half of 50 years is there in bed and you're praying God takes you instead. Trust me, friends, 100 years goes faster than you think. In the toilsome labor under the sun, the days go slow, but the years go fast. Would you pray with me? Father, for the couple in drift right now, wherever they are on that path, that the one decision they would make today, taking their faith in Christ, turning that bus around and believing that the same power that raised Jesus from the dead can put them back on that path to decision, and that they will take the steps necessary and reach out for the help necessary and call out to backup singers, turn them way up and turn down and mute the other voices, the jaded voices in their life that have kept them in drift, and that they would make the choice to give up all other choices. For the couples enjoying life together, saying very happy, extremely happy, that they would continue to enjoy life on that path of decision. For the one who's never placed faith in Jesus, that today would be the day of their salvation, that they would confess with their mouth Jesus is Lord, believe in their heart that he's been raised from the dead, that they would be saved. We pray all of this in the authority of the name of Jesus.